Recall the chiasm of Daniel 8:23 through 25a. Recall the second and third layers, that they speak of the little horn's power being not his own, of him destroying wonderfully or miraculously the mighty and the holy people, the Jews. Recall that the little horn has goat power, as he is attached to the goat. Recall that the goat is a symbol of Azazel, the devil. Was the destruction of the Jews by Rome miraculous, demonic? The fall of Jerusalem, satanic. Our source, Ellen G. White, The Great Controversy, Mountain View, California. Pacific Press Publishing Association, 1888, 1907, 1911. This is not a historical source as such, but is an inspired commentary on history from a biblical point of view. Our first three quotes, page 28 and 29. God withdrew his protection from them, and removed his restraining power from Satan and his angels, and the nation was left to the control of the leader she had chosen. Satan aroused the fiercest and most debased passions of the soul. Men did not reason, they were beyond reason, controlled by impulse and blind rage. They became satanic in their cruelty. Page 28. Satan was at the head of the nation, and the highest civil and religious authorities were under his sway. Page 28 and 29. Our fourth quote, page 35 and 36. By stubborn rejection of divine love and mercy, the Jews had caused the protection of God to be withdrawn from them, and Satan was permitted to rule them according to his will. The horrible cruelties enacted in the destruction of Jerusalem are a demonstration of Satan's vindictive power over those who yield to his control. Page 35 and 36. The Fall of Jerusalem. Our source, Henry Hart Millman, The History of the Jews, 3 volumes, London, John Murray, 1829, Volume 3. This is a historical source. Our first 4 quotes, pages 4 and 5, depictions of the temple prior to the Roman siege. And among the appointed victims, men, mortally wounded by the arrows of their own brethren without, lay gasping upon the steps of the altar. Page 4. Clouds of missiles were continually discharged into the upper court of the temple, and the whole sacred pavement was strewn with dead bodies. Page 4. They slew not a few of their enemies in the upper court, and some who came to sacrifice. For it was a strange feature in this fearful contest that the religious ceremonies still went on upon the altar, which was often encircled with the dead. Beside the human victims which fell around, the customary sacrifices were regularly offered. Page 4. Even strangers from distant parts would still arrive, and passing over the pavement slippery with human blood, make their way to the temple of their fathers, where they fondly thought the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob still retained his particular dwelling within the Holy of Holies. Often, in the very act of prayer or sacrifice, the arrows would come whizzing in, or the heavy stone following thundering on their heads, and they would pay with their lives the price of kneeling and worshipping in the sacred place. Page 5. Our fifth quote, page 6, a depiction of the nation's leadership. In one point the 3 parties concurred, the persecution of the citizens, and in the condign punishment of every individual whom they suspected of wishing well to the Roman army, as their common enemy. Page 6. Our sixth quote, page 36. a depiction of the nation's leadership. He that was plundered by Simon was sent to John. He that had been stripped by John was sent to Simon. So by turns they, as it were, shared the bodies and drained the blood of the citizens. Their common crimes united them in friendship. They were jealous if either deprived the other of his share in some flagrant cruelty, and complained of being wronged if excluded from some atrocious iniquity. Page 36. Our seventh quote, page 6, a depiction of the average citizen. But it was even more dreadful to see the callous hard-heartedness which had seized all ranks. All were alike become reckless from desperation. There was no feeling for the nearest kindred. Their very burial was neglected. All the desires, the hopes, the interests of life were extinguished. Death was so near, it was scarcely worth while to avoid it. Men went trampling over dead bodies as over the common pavement, and their familiarity with murder, as it deadened the hearts of the citizens, so it increased the ferocity of the soldiers. Page 6. Our next 5 quotes, pages 34, 35, and 36. Depictions of the famine. No grain was exposed for public sale. They forced open and searched the houses. If they found any, they punished the owners for their refusal. If none was discovered, they tortured them with greater cruelty for concealing it with such care. Page 34. Every kind feeling, love, respect, natural affection, were extinct through the all-absorbing want. Wives would snatch the last morsel from husbands, children from parents, mothers from children. They would intercept even their own milk from the lips of their pining babies. Page 35. Old men were scourged till they surrendered the food to which their hands clung desperately, and even were dragged about by the hair till they gave up what they had. Children were seized as they hung upon the miserable morsels they had got, whirled around and dashed upon the pavement. Tortures which cannot be related with decency were employed against those who had a loaf or a handful of barley. Page 35. Sometimes it was done by those who had abundance of food, with a deliberate design of husbanding their own resources. If any wretches crept out near the Roman posts to pick up some miserable herbs or vegetables, they were plundered on their return. And if they entreated, in the awful name of God, that some portion at least might be left them of what they had obtained at the hazard of their lives, they might think themselves well off if they escaped being killed as well as pillaged. Page 36. Our next quote, pages 53 and 54, a depiction of one woman during the famine. There was a woman of Perea, from the village of Bethzab, Mary, the daughter of Eliezer. She possessed considerable wealth when she took refuge in the city. Day after day she had been plundered by the robbers, whom she had provoked by her bitter imprecations. No one, however, would mercifully put an end to her misery, and her mind maddened with wrong. Her body preyed upon by famine, she wildly resolved on an expedient which might gratify at once her vengeance and her hunger. She had an infant that was vainly endeavoring to obtain some moisture from her dry bosom. She seized it, cooked it, ate one half, and set the other aside. The smoke and the smell of food quickly reached the robbers. They forced her door, and with horrible threats commanded her to give up what she had been feasting on. She replied with horrible indifference that she had carefully reserved her good friends a part of her meal. She uncovered the remains of her child. The savage men stood speechless, at which she cried out with a shrill voice, "Eat, for I have eaten. Be ye not more delicate than a woman, more tender-hearted than a mother? Or if ye are too religious to touch such food, I've eaten half already. Leave me the rest." They retired pale and trembling with horror. The story spread rapidly through the city, and reached the Roman camp, where it was first heard with incredulity, afterwards with the deepest commiseration. Pages 53 and 54.